Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver. In today's episode, we turn our attention to architecture and its role in shaping not just the buildings and infrastructure around us, but the society, the environment, and communities that are created by a built environment. To tackle this challenging brief, I'm joined today by Chris Williamson, internationally renowned architect, founder of Weston Williamson Partners, the practice he set up in 1985, and the freshly installed new president of the Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA. Chris is a man with a bold vision to reshape the profession and reshape RIBA, an organisation which has been the cornerstone for architecture for nearly 2 centuries. But today the institution faces serious questions about its relevance, its purpose, and how it can adapt to meet the needs of a fast-changing world. And as issues like climate resilience, community engagement and professional diversity take centre stage, there's a growing pressure for RIBA to evolve. But to be honest, it's a challenge that Chris has been immersed in for his whole career, having worked on a huge portfolio of infrastructure projects, including notably the Jubilee Line Extension Station at London Bridge, Elizabeth Line stations at Paddington and Woolwich, the Melbourne Metro Tunnel project, plus many urban regeneration projects such as the Arden Cross Master Plan in the West Midlands. All of this work has emphasised Chris's focus on the design of spaces that are not only functional, but are sustainable and crucially enjoyable for people. And in his presidential nomination bid, Chris vowed to review the 2021 RIBA Master Plan to create a more purposeful institution that leads on sustainability, champions diverse routes into the profession, delivers lifelong learning, and rebuilds public trust in architecture as a force for societal progress. So what does that future look like? Chris, let's have a chat about it. Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Not a problem at all. Well, Chris, you have set out quite a set of challenges for your 2-year presidency, and we'll have a chat about those in a moment. But just to kick off, after a career in practice of doing stuff, are you enjoying yourself in office at RIBA?
I am, yes. This is the start of my 6th week, and the first 6 weeks has been great. I judged the Sterling Prize, or helped to judge it. Had nominations for honorary fellows, so a lot of it has been really enjoyable.
Fantastic.
Most of it,
but at the heart of your plan is the difficult stuff. Your assertion that without change, RIBA may not, as you put it, survive another generation. So, what do you think has eroded its relevance, particularly amongst the younger architects?
So when I was young, RIBA was the place where you went for all the best lectures, all the best competitions, exhibitions, talks. There was an annual conference. It was, as the Victorians set it up to be, a learned society. Yeah. And these days, people get their information from lots of different places. So I think not just RIBA, but most professional institutes have to change and have to adapt. So I'm quite trying to be quite specific of what I think I can achieve in 2 years. So concentrating on the issues that you've set out, and hopefully inspire somebody else to come along after me and continue the same work.
But you argue that RIBA should be a qualification, not just a club. I mean, how does that redefinition change its relationship with members?
I believe very strongly in that. I mean, I was saying the same thing when I was on council 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, I played tennis with a guy a couple of weeks ago, a 17-year-old guy, and he was saying, I can't wait till I finish my exams. I hate exams. I hope I never have to do another one again. And I said, well, I'm 70 next year, and I'm still doing exams. I've just done a BREEAM assessment course to be a BREEAM assessor. I've just done a non-executive director's course to be. I'm always doing courses, and if you make them enjoyable, and most of the online courses are enjoyable, and you take the stress out of doing them by making them multiple choice, and you can go back and do them again. I think people, when I go to Singapore, Malaysia, and China, and I see the thirst for education that they have, I really do worry that we're being left behind. And post-Grenfell, we've got to get much better at how we organise ourselves, not just architects, but the whole industry.
But I suppose whether it's engineering or whether it's architecture or whatever profession, those professions are getting broader and broader. And we mentioned sustainability, we mentioned the whole issue around building community, etc. I mean, how does RIBA really celebrate and empower that breadth while really still maintaining the professional qualification of being an architect?
Well, that's a key part of my program. So I would want to see more specialisms within architecture and be able to specialize. So so that you can curate your own career. So the reason I'm so I bore myself about online learning sometimes, but I think to me it's so essential that you can specialize in something. We all get paid more and earn more and get better fees if we're specialists. So you should be able to specialize in sustainability, in conservation, in technology, in AI, or in my case, infrastructure. I think having a specialism that you can market around the world gives you better ability. My inbox is full of complaints about low fees. Well, we have to get better in order to do that. We need to look at ourselves and see what we can do, rather than saying we want to bring back the mandatory fee scale. That's not going to happen. So that's why I'm passionate about this, is because not only do you increase the specialisms, and you can then prove to the outside world that we are specialists. So the nice thing is that RIBA are actually moving towards that. I just need to make sure that it's done in a sensible timescale, and make sure these changes do happen.
Well, one of the other things I think you've pointed out is that many architects feel unheard by their institutions. How do you ensure the profession's grassroots voices are being part of this, this reform conversation?
So I think the closing of the building at 66 Portland Place is actually quite a good thing. I love the building, and it's ironic that I love it so much. It's me that's president when it's empty. To be
clear, though, it's a temporary closure.
It is. But the nice thing is that it will encourage us to go out more. So I've already been to the regions. I'll go to schools. I'm going to Derby tomorrow, and so getting out and about and taking the temperature of the practice, the profession, is really important. But also, I've set up a President's Advisory Committee, which has the great and the good on it, in order to bring them into the organisation as well, so that we're using the great goodwill that there exists amongst the profession to actually get some collaboration across the industry. People not just look at it as an institute, but look at how we relate to the other professional bodies and the construction industry as a whole.
And I suppose highlighting the fact that it's got a home that's in London, but it's actually it's a national body. It's an international global body.
It is, and I think the international thing is really important, because ironically RIBA is often appreciated a lot more outside of the UK than it is inside.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about you and your motivations, Chris. Your RIBA presidential nomination used the phrase, I'm RIBA because I love architecture. What do you love about architecture so much then?
So when I was at school, I got a place at Leicester Poly to study graphic design, and then I picked up a book actually published by the RIBA on architecture, and I read it cover to cover one Wednesday afternoon.
This is Your Architect, by Derek Senior, is it?
Yeah, and it described everything about an architect, what they did, and to me, I just went to my careers office and said, this is exactly what I want to do. But the problem is, and it still is the case, that working class kids aren't encouraged into the professions. And that's something I want to change. And that's something that having different pathways with online learning, you can get a greater diversity in the profession. So I think anything that we can do to capture people's imagination, I think getting more architects into schools to tell people what a great profession it is. So I begged Leicester Poly to let me study architecture instead, and it's the best single decision I've ever made. Because I think it gives you it's a vocation, and that in some ways it's a bad thing, because that's why we put up with low salaries a lot of the time. But it's actually so exciting to be an architect.
Yeah. Well, as I said at the top, it's about building, it's about the built environment, but it's necessarily therefore about people, and I think that's a really a critical thing about it. The book you referenced, Your Architect, it was written by Derek Senior. It was someone, as he points out, he's not an architect, he's not a critic, he was just a user of buildings. Which is an interesting perspective to come from, because we all are. What about its message really still resonates for you then?
So this is a bit like therapy, but I came from quite a religious background, and I think my dad had been a lay preacher, and he died when I was 3, and my mum wanted me to, I think, follow in his footsteps. So the vicar, our local vicar, was quite upset when I told him I was going to study architecture instead of theology, I think. But to me, architecture is like a religion. It improves people's mental health, their physical health, and their spiritual health. I believe it has become a religion to me because it encompasses everything. It gives you a code to live by, and the book described the way that an architect has a role to society, not just the person that's paying the bills. And that a lot of the things that the book described was actually very much like being a vicar, but it was in the world of design rather than...
Well, there's a lot in it. I mean, there's a lot of words in the book. It's a very small book, but there's a lot in it. I mean, do you think that those kind of messages, when it comes to the modern profession, are too often overlooked then by clients who want a building at a certain cost, or about architects who want to come up with a certain design which perhaps doesn't encompass what people are thinking as being a good design? I always draw this standard deviation curve in the office. There's not many people that want something cheap and cheerful and just not very good. There's not many people that can afford to have the best of the best, and that goes for whether it's fashion or cars or music. There's the majority of the market is in the middle of that bell curve, and you can nudge people to do a little bit better, and if you can convince them that it's in their commercial interest. And I think most people, we're not very good at doing that, I think. And I think architecture ought to be a bit more like the advertising industry, where you have a creative team and then you have an accounts team who looks after the money and the client relationship, because they are in some ways two different sides of the brain. But because architecture is mainly made up of one-man bands and small practices, our education system tends to try and get every architect to be the same and to do everything. And some people are good at it, and some people aren't very good, and they either concentrate on the design or the management. But I imagine that you found that throughout your career that there are different stages of projects that require different skills along the way.
Yeah, it's no good designing something brilliant if you can't get it built. I mean, Christo, the artist, always says that the process of building something, whether it's wrapping the Reichstag or getting all the agreements, or the running fence in America, getting all the agreements, getting all the permissions and all the stakeholders involved and the landowners, that's part of the process. The idea is great, and when you look at the annual satisfaction survey for architects, clients love our design skills and love our creativity, but our management is not so well regarded. Right. So I think we need to get better at both.
Well, your early exposure in the 40 under 40 competition helped launch your practice at Weston Williamson Partners back in 1985. I mean, you describe your career as being largely built on getting people out of their cars and onto well-designed public transport. I mean, have you succeeded over the last 40 years?
It's not been at all the career I thought I was going to have when Andrew and I were both at Leicester, but I've enjoyed every moment. It's been great. And the nice thing is that a lot of cities around the world look at what London has achieved in making London a more polycentric city. Mm-hmm. I live in North London, so I look down on Canary Wharf. And it's like watching two Renaissance estates vying with each other, watching how the Eastern cluster, and now you can see Stratford. And so anywhere where we've put in this fantastic infrastructure, like the Elizabeth line and previously the Jubilee line, there are new commercial centres, so not everybody has to come into the centre and go out again, and people have got more choice of where to live and work.
That, of course, that was historically the way that cities like London have developed.
And so a lot of cities around the world are looking at London And so we've been fortunate to work in Sydney and Melbourne and Toronto and lots of different places, which has been great. So it's an ongoing. I mean, there are some cities that are harder to achieve that than others, but it's been fantastic to work on.
Certainly, it's been a very global career that you've had. I mean, what lessons does that global experience bring you into your RIBA leadership then?
A lot of things. I mean, you do learn a lot by working overseas. I mean, and some countries do things a lot better than we do. I mean, in Sydney, for example, Transport for New South Wales have a motto above the reception that says the customer is at the heart of everything we do, and they do a lot of customer testing. So whenever you're designing something there, you have to test it out with different user groups. There's a lot more interaction with the end user. So I think the main thing I've learned in my career is probably to be collaborative, and that's what RIBA has to be. Collaborate with different institutions, different organisations, and also get out more. And I think if the government aren't going to listen just to architects on their own, they're going to listen to the construction industry, and we have to act as one in lots of things.
I get the impression you're still learning every day though, Chris.
No, I think it is. I mean, it's very different to running an architectural practice. You in an architectural practice, it's a more commercial organisation and everybody pulls in the same direction. I think different departments have sort of slightly different timescales sometimes and slightly different concerns and slightly different budgets. So you have to. I do have to learn to work collaboratively with everybody in the institute, and they're the ones with the power. The president doesn't have an awful lot of power over it itself, so it is going to be a team effort. But the nice thing is that my 2-year plan has been accepted by the board and the council, so that's what we are going to be working on.
So it's the process now of driving it forward. I must just reflect at the moment on the recent loss of two architectural greats, Sir Nicholas Grimshaw, architect of the Eden Project, amongst many other things, and most recently Sir Terry Farrell, famously the designer of the former MI6 building, of James Bond fame, of course, in London. What are your recollections of their work and their place in the profession?
They were both incredibly inspirational, and before that we lost Richard Rogers and Michael Hopkins, and they were for me, because that's my style of architecture. I liked that sort of building on the tradition of people like Paxton and Brunel and the integration of engineering and architecture, which is what I tried to achieve in my work. But personally, I was lucky enough to meet both of them a few times. The first time I met Nick Grimshaw was when I invited him up to speak. I was the chairman of the architect student group, and he arrived off the train. I picked him up from the train in my Triumph Spitfire and drove him to the lecture theatre, and he had with him one of those green plastic briefcases which people had at the time, and he had his slide carousels and an apple pie, I remember, for the journey home. And I also remember he didn't charge a fee, because I had a budget for the whole year of about 400 quid to get people up usually from London to speak. And he spoke to a packed audience, and it was really inspirational. And he was a great guy. Yeah. And when you're that young, that makes a huge impression on you, because you can see that you that's the profession you want to be involved in. And then Terry Farrell was actually really good to us, to Andrew and I. He invited us to work on a few competitions.
Andrew, your
with
business
him.
partner,
Yeah, and we did a competition in Västerås in Sweden for a station, which we actually won with him. But it didn't go anywhere. But he was a really great guy, and I loved his attitude towards placemaking and urban design. And he did a lot in the profession and the industry to bring that forward.
Yeah. And do those, I suppose you might call them architects, do those kind of high stature architects, are they still coming through? Obviously, you're one of them, but are they still coming through in the way that they were then?
I think they are. I think the nature of architecture's changed. I mean, I'm not sure that we'll see their like again as you know, as figureheads. I think these days the firms it's much more collaborative.
Yeah.
It has to be. And it's also interesting to see how they survive another generation. And you need to put the succession plan in place long before you get to that age. But it has been a really interesting time, because when I was a student, there were lots of firms like Chamberlain, Powell and Barn who did the Barbican and Darbon and Darker. They often, those fantastic architects didn't survive another generation because they hadn't got, they too heavily reliant on one person. So I think it's great to have your name on the signboard, but it's not about that person or those people. It's about the office and keeping it going.
And that whole team that produces a big bit of built environment. What do you get up to then, Chris, when you're not architecting and rebuilding? You mentioned tennis.
Yeah, so when I was at Michael Hopkins, I started a cricket team, and it was going for 40 years. Gradually, all the Hopkins crowd stopped playing, but it became friends of friends, and that was wonderful for 40 years. It sort of didn't survive COVID when we had to stop playing. So I started playing tennis, which it doesn't take so long, and you can have a good run around. So one of the highlights of my week is actually playing with a bunch of architects on a Sunday evening, which I love because I find it fascinating.
So doubles, not singles.
Yeah, but I still do play singles, but because I could chase a ball all day, whether it's football or cricket. I don't know. I think I was a Yorkshire Terrier in a former life. I just love running after a ball.
Well, sadly my tennis days are over due to the bad knee. The bad knee has let me down there. So anyway, other things are available. Let's talk a bit more about RIBA and your role there. You've called RIBA a respected but under-leveraged brand. So how could it better use that brand to benefit its members and serve the public good?
So I think we need to get better at political affiliations and to make sure that we get our message across. I mean, we most people even now don't know exactly what an architect does, and I think there's lots of things we can do about that. We can get it out into schools. We can get our message across better. I remember the first time I got involved with RIBA, David Rock was president. I think it was 1999. And he was going to have this advertising campaign saying, why choose an architect when you can choose a RIBA architect? And not just about the best Sterling Prize buildings, but about what an architect can do for you. And but then there was a change of president, and the new president didn't think it was a good idea. But I think something like that really does take time to explain what an architect does. Because I judged the regional awards last year, and it was so life-affirming to find out that the clients at the end of all the design process really appreciated their architect. So I think even on the small projects, regional projects, there's such a huge goodwill towards architecture, but we need to get that message out to more people.
Well, one of the things that you've made central to your vision is sustainability. I mean, how would you say that RIBA shifts the profession from, I suppose, sustainability as an aspiration to actually implementing sustainability as a matter of course?
Well, we have a lot of experts in the organisation, and we need to keep. I mean, at the moment, there's so many people sniping and denying that we do have a problem, and I think that's an issue. We need to make sure that people understand that there is a problem. I mean, strangely, the reason Andrew and I got together in the first place, we were put together in alphabetical order at Leicester Poly for group projects. But the reason we carried on working together is because it was the mid-70s and there was the first energy crisis when the oil cartel put up their prices. So we both won prizes for competitions for sustainability, but it's been very difficult throughout our career in the 80s, nobody really wanted to know about sustainability, but now, if it's not too late already, it's getting too late, and you have to keep on trying to persuade. So I think the way to do that is that you can't rely on market forces. You have to lobby the government to do something about it. It's got to be done by legislation rather than asking people.
But there's also a philosophy, I suppose, and maybe a cultural shift. And we've been doing, I'm a trustee here at the Building Centre. We're speaking at the Building Centre today. I'm a trustee here, and we've been doing a lot of work on retrofit, whether it's in commercial buildings, whether it's in housing. And it all makes common sense when you think about, actually rather knocking things down and actually retaining as much as you possibly can. But it's a cultural shift in many ways in mindset to get people to think that way, because the natural thing is, I want a new shiny one. How does RIBA help that debate around retrofit? Not just in design guidance, but in changing procurement and policy, etc.
Yeah, I think I go around a lot of schools of architecture, and it's fantastic to see students embracing the fact that sustainability is a big part of the work that they're going to be doing. And we already know that 80% of the buildings that we need are already here, and we've got to improve those before we start knocking them down and building new ones.
So rather than just recycling steel, actually reusing the steel structures that are there and already built. And the concrete structures, of course.
But we are a strange race in a way, because we can't actually stop ourselves from. We think we come up with solutions to things. Like 10 years ago, the big desire was the paperless office. And now we find out that by not using so much paper, we need all these huge data centers that take an enormous amount of power. And we did that with the motor car replacing the horse and cart. We think we're making progress. We're just making problems for ourselves. So I think there's something that, as a race, that drives us on to be bigger, better, quicker, faster. And we've got to sort of. I'm as guilty as the next person, because when I was young, I loved the moon landing. I loved all those science fiction things of monorails and Hyperloop and all that sort of thing. But we have to look at why we're doing it, rather than just that we've got the technology, we've got to use it. We should only use it if it's going to make the planet more sustainable.
No, but the world is still powered by oil, and it's car-centric. And I mentioned your career goal of getting people out of their cars. So how does RIBA best influence that system-level change required to reach net zero then? Because it's a big ask.
It is, but I think, as I was saying, we are a strange race in that we want this progress, and we don't always use technology wisely. But I think the great thing about us as a species is that once we do find that there is a problem, we do something about it. So with the car, we've made vast improvements. We know we can use sustainable materials and green energy. So I think we are getting there. We just need to act a bit faster and get every other country on board as well.
Will you propose pairing architects with local MPs as one way to try to boost that influence around what architects do? I mean, what role would you say RIBA should play in that political lobbying and civic leadership?
So the policy team at RIBA is submitting a paper which people like Peter Murray are helping with, to try and champion city architects, and particularly with the new regional mayors, to try and get more design thinking into our planning system. So I think there's lots of things we can do, and having closer affiliations, getting more architects involved. I've always been involved in my local community. One of the coalition government introduced community forums, and they were really good. And so I think architects should get out more and be involved in their community, and all of those sorts of things.
Should they be more vocal, more almost activist? in terms of their input on matters of social and spatial justice?
I think so. I mean, I think we should be more visible, and we do have a lot to say. And sometimes, I mean, there's something about our training which it teaches us to be open-minded and come up with ideas and problem solve. We sometimes should be a bit more, stand out a bit more, and not be afraid to say what we think. I mean, especially in this day and age, the politicians that seem to be making the most are not the ones with the best ideas. They're the ones that get their message across more.
But of course, we have got some rather large bits of legislation, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, for instance, going through right now. And I know that RIBA has just secured an amendment to ensure that design quality is at the heart of new development. That's a good thing, I imagine, for you, rather than something that perhaps slows things up even more. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is definitely. And I was at the Labour Party conference a couple of weeks ago and banging the drum about quality, and people like Matthew Pennycook is great, and he was saying the same thing. So I think everybody's on the same page. We just need to make it happen.
Okay. We're just coming to an end. We're recording, as I said, this podcast in a quiet corner, or sometimes not so quiet corner of the building centre in central London. A building which 90 years ago played home to building material advances and now sets out to engage the public with the profession. I mean, is it a building that resonates with you in your career? People quite often say, yeah, I used to come here a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I've had some been to lots of great events here, and I think it is. I'm a great believer in getting all the profession together. I mean, the American Institute of Architects has an annual conference, and they have not just great speakers, great lecturers, great talks, but they have products there as well. Then I think the industry we need to learn from each other, and having that, and to me, that's what this place does. The building centre does get the industry together.
I mean, you worked on many community-focused projects. I mean, what has that taught you about the architect's social role, or more importantly, I suppose, the public's perception of the architect's social role?
I'm always amazed at how interested people are. So I bought an old disused church in my hometown in the East Midlands, and I converted it into a community arts centre. We had 90 architecture students from Trent University there, looking at ways in which you could turn this small post-industrial town into a creative hub with the local authority, and everybody was so excited by it. So I think the will is there. At the moment, the economy isn't in a great place, so nobody's got any money. But I mean, but there are a lot of ways in which you can achieve that, and by Section 106 agreements, and by sponsorship, and by developers wanting to do the right thing. So I think architects have always been quite visionary, and you need to sell the idea and work with the local community.
Well, following on that, I mean, what's your advice to young people looking to build a career in the built environment, in architecture or in engineering or whatever? And you mentioned this, the financial situation is not that great at the moment, but would you still be encouraging people to go into this profession?
I went to Leicester University last week, De Montfort, and I always wish whenever I go I was a student again. I mean, I think I would love to do it all again. I mean, obviously the angst of knowing if you're going to make a career out of it, and if you're always going to be employed, it doesn't go away. But it is a fantastic career to be involved in. And these days, the great thing about architectural education is people go into different fields. They can, if you can use the new technologies, you can go into film, you can go into robotics. It is a great course, not just to end up as an architect, although that's fantastic, but to go into other fields as well.
Yeah. Well, finally, I suppose, how do you think that either those young people or anyone perhaps listening to this podcast might be able to help you in your role at RIBA right now?
I think just by getting involved. I mean, I think a lot of people snipe from the outside about the profession, and there are challenges to it. We all want to be better paid. We all want to be to have more influence, but we all have to look to ourselves to what we can do about it and work collectively to achieve it. So I think, it's human nature to complain, but I think making sure that people do get involved, and there is such a great will to improve the environment, and most people now do understand the challenges. We can help them find the solutions. Architects don't have all the answers, but we have a few of them.
Well, certainly it's not easy to stick your head above the parapet, so congratulations for doing that and for getting stuck into your role at the RIBA. It is really, really interesting challenges facing the whole profession, really interesting challenges facing architecture right now. So thanks so much for joining me today to explain some of them.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. Bye.
And my pleasure indeed. But sadly, that's all we've got time for today. But we have got more on the Infrastructure podcast in the pipeline and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the biggest issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us. Thanks so much again to Chris for joining me here at the Building Centre. And as I say, in a noisy and not so noisy environment, but I look forward to seeing you again very soon.